All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Coffee and Questions podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Berman Michael. You already know that. But the person that I'm really, really excited about having here is none other than Brian Covey. And one of the things I love about you, Brian, and this is not scripted, I swear, is you're just so real. Every time I talk to you, you are just Brian. And it's so easy to have a conversation with you, whether we're in person, whether we're on Zoom, whether we're texting. Like I know I'm getting the real Brian. And I'm really excited to welcome you to the podcast. I think that my audience needs to hear what you have to say. And I think we're going to have a really cool conversation. But for those of you guys who maybe don't know Brian, he is the current EVP of Revolution Mortgage. And one of the things he said to me offline that I think most people can really relate with or relate to is he's an entrepreneur, but more so he's a disruptor in the space. And I think we're going to dig into what does that mean and what does that look like for someone like you, Brian. But before we dig into all of that, Brian, welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you're here.
How about it, Michelle? Yeah, we're going to bring some value. And I know your show, like, I love what you're doing. And there's going to be a lot of synergies for people that, to your point, I love that about you too. It's like we connect with real people. That's how social, like we met on social before we met in person. And I
We met
always
on
say, man, when you
LinkedIn.
meet some,
My least favorite platform. We met on LinkedIn. But
but you know what? What's so cool is like, then you meet somebody and think back the last time you met somebody and you'd only met them on social and you had one or two experiences, right? The one is, well, that's not the same person. And that's not cool. But the ones that are like, oh, they're even better, or they're just like I thought they would be, and you start to really connect. To me, that's the whole premise. That's why we get on social. It's not for all that other stuff, but to meet great people, build relationships.
absolutely. And you're so right. And I feel like we've done a really good job at that. And I think we're both people that have the ability to show others how easy that can be and really uncomplicate the complicated. But before we dig into the real focus of today's episode, Brian, will you tell us a little bit about you? How did you get into the mortgage industry? How did you become the Brian that we all know and love?
Oh man, well, I always start with this as Nicole and I, that's my bride, like my best friend, my ride or die. Like the best move I ever made outside of giving my life to Jesus was I married Nicole. And so 22 years later, I would tell you we've been through so much. And our first two kids were born '07 and '08. I was in the mortgage business, and everybody that was in the business knows how hard that was. And we made it through that. We've made it through me losing my job. We've made it through all types of like just chaos. And we were blessed to have our third child, Henry. And so we've got three kids, 17, 15, and 9. And I'll tell you, I got into the business really weird. And when you go back to that, I was a college athlete, played D1 sports, University of Memphis, college soccer, go Tigers. And I loved soccer. That was going to be my dream. That was my passion. I went and got to play professionally for a couple of years. I got my coaching license, which I thought after sports, like the path was I'm going to go coach. And I start getting into that and I'm coaching and I realized one, there's not a lot of money in coaching. It's
Mm-mm.
not a very, it's a thankless job, I would tell people. And I always had this passion in college. And one of my professors, I'll never forget in high school, talked about Warren Buffett. And he was teaching us about investing and money. And I was just fascinated, like, how did the financial system work? How did this work? And all of that. And I wish I could tell you I got hired. I tried to apply at Edward Jones and, First Tennessee and all the banks. No one would hire me because my resume was soccer. And I went to a career fair one day. I'd come back, I'd finished my degree after playing. And I'll never forget one of the groups there, Wells Fargo Financial, they said, we hire athletes. We like to hire people that work hard and are trainable. And I'm like, everything they're saying, I'm like, that's me, that's me. Came with a salary, which was really cool. And at the time, Nicole and I were dating. And I remember I was like, okay, I've got a path to choose. And we probably all face this is I can go this way. And I knew my future would happen sooner if I went that way. I could keep playing soccer, keep living out that dream. But part of me was like, been there, done that. Okay, I'm good. Filled the bucket. And I
Mm-hmm.
went and started Wells Fargo Financial. And I share that story with you because I learned credit, income, assets. We're selling mortgage rates, auto financing, furniture financing. And some of our mortgage rates, Michelle, were like 16, 18%. So I always say, whatever rate you're selling today, give me a break. You're helping people solve a problem. You're helping put them in a better situation. And that was the catalyst for me because my friends were buying houses. We were trying to buy our first house. We didn't know what to do. And in essence, I was stepping into a problem that needed to be solved. Of all of us that were just out of college recently knew we didn't need to rent, but we didn't know how to buy a home. And so I stepped in and was able to start helping, moved over and did mortgage full time. now 23 years later, I'm still in an industry that keeps challenging me, keeps giving. And I would tell you, it looks nothing like what it did when I started, right? It's so different, which I love.
Well, and I think if it did look the same, that would be a different issue,
Yeah.
probably. And I think that goes for us as humans. And what's funny is you said, being a coach is a thankless job, and my husband is a strength and conditioning coach for the military after serving in the Special Forces 5th Group Division here for the Army for almost 7 years. And gosh, guys, the stories he has when he comes home of just pure thanklessness, like the work that he puts in, the hours he puts in for the Army to just be like, yeah, no, or thanks for doing 40 hours of that. And by the way, we're not going to do any of it. It's constant. And I feel like, I, as an athlete myself, graduated from Rutgers swimming all 4 years. There's just something different about how we operate. And from one athlete to the other, you obviously being one as well. I don't know that there's a word for it. I don't know that there's a phrase, quote unquote, to maybe describe what makes us different. But there is something that you said, and a lot of even your podcast, which I've been very honored and blessed to be on, and that we've talked heavily about privately, which is you have this competitive edge in situations, whether it's you getting a job at Wells Fargo or me deciding to start my company, 10 years ago in 2014. But I guess where I really want to go with our conversation is maybe really not even as it relates to social, because I think we'll get there, but the competitive edge aspect, how would you describe it? How would you say it's impacted the path that you had ultimately ended up choosing? And what about it do you feel like is why you are who you are right now?
I love it. And yeah, D1 athlete to D1 athlete, those out there, whether you have competed at that level or not, I'll tell you, we're different.
Mm.
And all of us are different. And when I started coming up with this competitive edge, I kept coming back to this. And we've heard competitive advantage, and I've heard, you have the edge there. Competitive edge is simply this. It's all the unique experiences and things that motivate you and inspire you. They're things that you've done in your past you may not put worth on, but they make you different than your competition. They make you different than the person beside you. And it is an internal drive. And one of my coaches calls it a burn. And I would tell you, like, a lot of us focus on this why and this purpose, and that's good. That's surface level. When you get beneath that, I believe there's a competitive edge that resides in all of us as to if your back was up against the wall and you had to go get something done, you have the resources and the tools and the skills because you've been there before. And it's what would push you and motivate you to fight your way out of a difficult situation. Look, I've lost my job. We got our first two kids in the crisis, which I also had my job eliminated and had to start traveling and do things. I've been with my back against the wall where insurmountable debt, right? Losing a job, having my health and fitness go completely outside of where I was comfortable. We've all had these things. Your competitive edge is what's gotten you out of that situation because you could have stayed there. And some of you might be listening going, Brian, I'm kind of there right now. And I would invite you to consider there's something deep inside of you that God's planted there, a seed and a dream and a desire. You need to be somewhere else. It is your competitive edge. When you tap into it and you start to compete every day, you don't show up and you no longer go through the motions and you don't participate. You compete. But I always say this, you're competing against yourself and the best of you that day. There is a version of Brian that I've created 5 years and 10 years down the road. I know exactly what I want to be, what I want to look like. Now, is that going to happen exactly like I have it planned? I don't know. God has a bigger plan. I don't know. But I do know this, until I can envision it and see it, I will never become that. And so that competitive edge for all of us becomes something we need to envision in ourselves. It's the best version, and we show up and we compete every day. So that's really birthed this whole, I would tell you, psychology and philosophy of, I believe people are wired to show up and compete. Whatever level that is, don't be D1. You could be a mom today listening to this and going, I want to be the best freaking mom out there for my kid. I want to be the best teacher. I want to be the best whatever you do. You need to now get equipped with the skills. And then I believe it's your beliefs that anchor it. You believe you're worthy of that and you can accomplish it. And so this competitive edge for me, I'm a son of a psychologist and a pastor. And so I'm very much into that side of what makes people think this way, what makes people believe that way. And being an athlete, you'll respect this, is I know a large portion of success for athletes is here.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the book Grit by Angela Duckworth, she talks about the 90-10 concept, and most athletes are 90% mental, 10% physical ability. And, you know, I swam for 20 years. I swam the mile, which is the longest race that any female can swim, any swimmer can swim for that matter. And it just became an Olympic sport for women, not this past Paris Olympics, but the Olympics prior. And one thing I can tell you is it's hard, man. Like it is so many hours over and over and over again where you really don't want to be there. There are a lot of other things that you would probably rather be doing. But to your point, the competitive edge aspect, when you go all the way to today, I look back and I say, man, every decision that I made to, I'm going to show up at practice at 5 a.m. without having gone out the night before because I don't want to void my scholarship by accidentally showing up slightly intoxicated, which I saw many people fall victim to. That's the reality of a college athlete, right? We have so many shiny objects that are designed to distract us from what we're really there for. And I'm really proud of the fact that that didn't happen to me. But I want to relate to something that you said because I don't want to lose your thought and I want to amplify it. You and I both are great friends with Renee. So I love that phrase, amplify, because it's so relevant. But back when I swam in high school and even before that in elementary school and middle school, my dad used to always say something and it kind of pissed me off in the moment, frankly. And for a lot of my life, I've always kind of craved this affirmation aspect of, is my dad proud of me? And he's never really said that. He's never really said, Michelle, you're so awesome. Like, I'm so proud of you. He's still to this day at 34 years old, really never said that. But where did that stem from? It was after every race, whether it was 100 or whether it was the mile. The first thing my dad would ask me was, honey, was that the best that you had today? And in the moment, I'd be like, why are you asking me that, Dad? I just PR'd by 10 seconds or I just won my heat or whatever. And I'd kind of be like annoyed. And the reality is how he phrased that question for 20 years of my life has been and is still the current foundation for how I run a company. Because if every single day I can go to bed at night and say, hey, I've done the best that I could possibly do today, and maybe my best wasn't that awesome today, but it was the best I had today, then I get to go to bed at night knowing that I'm doing a good thing. And
Yes.
I think for me, that's my competitive edge. I think you have so many different stories and things that other people can relate to, but if we can transition this to social, right? How does that competitive edge aspect help you or influence how you show up as Brian?
Great question. And I will tell you, it wasn't until I leaned into this that I start to have some success. I struggled my first few years of social. Like I would just kind of pray and post, as I call it, like
Yep.
post and
Pull and pray.
pray. And I'm just like putting stuff out there. I'm putting quotes out there and I'm just kind of like dabbing my toe in the water. Like I'm gonna put this out there. I mean, my videos, I look back and they're horrendous. I mean, I laugh, I go, but I was posting and I always tell everybody, there's got to be a point at which you just make a decision and, deciding is killing off something. Right. And I just decided I'm no longer going to sit on the sideline. Like I think about that in sports, like in soccer. I don't want to be on the sideline. I want to be in the freaking game. So I said, well, if I'm going to be in the game, I'm going to post videos. They may suck. People may never watch them, which they really didn't early on. And I started just to show up. Wasn't until I figured out, hey, what makes Brian tick? What makes me different? My competitive edge. Like, what are the things I've actually had results in? And then I'm like genuinely excited about sharing with people. I started sharing things like I know you do. Like I started sharing some of my workouts. I started sharing things about Nicole and I going out, on a date night. My kids, right? Like people can relate to that. I started sharing things with our mortgage team. Like, what are we doing in mortgage? I started sharing things about, hey, this investment property. I'm learning how to invest in real estate. And like, I just started sharing and documenting what I was doing. And it was so cool because when that started to happen, I started to see social as this way of how do I connect with people that love soccer? By the way, I share so much on soccer that people, this is one example I'll just give you that people overlook this really simple thing. I have people every day and there's games going on, right? I think about soccer as a year-round sport, depending if you're Premier League, Bundesliga, you got MLS, all this stuff. People have their teams. We start to connect up and we have this shared appreciation for a sport and we find out who their teams are. We end up just connecting. And I can tell you, even Saturday night, I sat down with someone, won't go into too much of it, but I'll just tell you this person, very successful. They are able to help me solve a problem currently in my business and something I'm thinking about doing. And they go, I can help you with that. I'm going to a soccer game. We have a common connection of soccer. And I don't want people to miss this.
Yeah.
Outside of that, they were in the military, they were a pilot and all this stuff, not giving up too much away, but I'll just say there's all these other connections, but our connection point was soccer. What are your connection points? And if you're not sharing those with other people, how do I know that you love to ride horses? How do I know that you love to play tennis? Like, how do I know your favorite school was Ole Miss? Like, I don't know. I could go on and on and on and go, there are connections out there that people are going to gravitate to you. And so, Michelle, everything changed for me when I was like, I'm going to show up. This is Brian. You may not like all the stuff I share with my faith and my fitness, and I'm sharing all that stuff. So what? But guess what? There are people that are gravitated that I have relationships with today that I believe are in my life because now we're on the same page. And fitness has been one of the anchors. I know we connected on it. You know, we were talking about Renee earlier. I have so many people that a common language. I don't know a person that doesn't want to improve their health or fitness right now. They're just going, hey, Michelle, Brian, I'm good enough. I don't know those people probably because I don't surround myself with people that don't want to improve like you.
Yep.
And so I give you just a lot of things there to think about is, are you showing up in a way that if someone were to just kind of peruse through your profile, go, well, yeah, man, I connect up with them, and a way to connect with you other than your business. Quit selling, quit pitching your stuff. Like that for me was the game changer.
Well, it's so simple, but yet it's so wildly overlooked in every, like, I mean, legit, Brian, every sales call I have every week, the conversations start out the same. I want to grow my following. I want more followers. I want more engagement. Michelle, my content, I'm putting all this time and effort and I feel like I'm spending all this money and nothing's happening. And it all boils down to one thing only. And you literally just alluded to it without even knowing probably that you did. But it's, are you waking up to messages every day in your inbox of conversations that need to be continued? And if the answer is no, it's one of two things. One, you're so like just business all the time that nobody has anything to talk about with you because they kind of get it. And it's also probably annoying. It's in their throat all the time, which is part of why I hate LinkedIn. No offense to anybody that loves LinkedIn, not my favorite platform. But secondly, you have nothing for people to talk about. There's nothing that I feel like I want to talk to you about. And you know, how many conversations have you and I had, Brian, about, hey, you had to leave a certain thing to be able to get on a plane and get home to go see your son play soccer, or you know, my son had his 3rd birthday party over the weekend, and everything I did revolved around that. I took Friday off. I rescheduled multiple coaching calls on Friday because it was more important to me to have everything dialed in. Yes, my son is 3. I don't care. That was really important to me to make that weekend the dream of a weekend for my 3-year-old. But I think if we're not posting content that people want to have conversations with us about, then we're missing the point of the platform and the point of why the people who created the platforms in the first place did it.
People are missing it today. I would tell you, especially in the mortgage space, right? And that's where you used the word disruptor earlier. And I challenge people to go back and look and see what type of surface level relationships they have, and these other like meaningful relationships. You're posting a lot about your products and your programs, and I see people following this, and yeah, I've got this, and I just made this change, and I did this, and all that. I'm like, my DMs are full. Like there are days that I'm actually trying to work through, like, how do I get back and be better at what I do and organize my time to get back to those people you're talking about in your DMs. And I love that you share that, because a lot of people are measuring these metrics on these other things, which I did too. I measured the vanity stuff. Let's be real.
We all have.
And then I started to realize,